Today we are going to do a manager specific food boot camp training. So yesterday we did a training for all of our anyone that's in the service line. You may have been in that training. So sorry if you had to hear 2 days worth of me talking. Um, but now we're going to talk about sort of take a 10,000 foot view of your role as managing this meal program. This training's partially adapted from a training I'd given with the Charter School Development Association, or the Charter School Development CSDC, the Charter School Development Center. And so this will give you. We're going to try to approach it both from the view of a small school district or a charter school utilizing some sort of meal vendor, being on the National School Lunch Program, assuming that you are supervising staff. I'll be honest, some of the slides are a little denser than I like to make them, but we got a lot of information to cover today. I will be, so if, to get ahead of any sort of the questions and requests, so good news, I'm going to be sending out both an email this week. It is both going to have links to all the resources we talk about. It's going to have links to the slides and to the training. So you're welcome to share it out with your team. And you're welcome to download the slides, and you'll have all of these resources at your fingertips, and you can rewatch this as much as you want. We're also going to be doing three more food handlers trainings and 2 more of these manager trainings. So if you like the live version, but someone on your team didn't get to attend, there's other dates you'll be able to go to observe. I'm doing something crazy today. I think we're going to have 60 people on this call, and I'm leaving it not as a webinar, but I converted it back to a meeting, which means that you should be able to come on and off mute, raise your hands, ask questions. You're welcome to do so, but if you're not trying to do so, if you could please try to stay muted, just so everyone just gets to hear me and not whatever's going on in your background. That all being said, let's kick this off. So here's our agenda for today. Again, and I blocked off roughly 2 hours. I don't think we're going to take that long, so hopefully I'll give you a little bit of time back as well. But here are the big things we want to cover today. Do a general overview of the child nutrition program, what to expect in your job. If you're new to this job, we're going to talk about the things both how School Food Solutions supports you, and some updates around state of California program funding and operations. We're going to talk budget and finance and a lot of the rules in there. You may not be your school CFO, but you probably do touch the budgeting or the finance side of it, and so we'll go into some more detail there than we have in past years. We're going to talk procurement and the different types and how that impacts what you purchase, which is within the child nutrition program. It's everything. And then we're going to talk about our operations in charter schools and small schools. And we're going to talk about common roadblocks. And I want to finish the training also talking about how do we increase participation? You've got all these kids on campus. You've already got a meal vendor. How do we get people to actually come and eat the food and enjoy it? And that's how we'll finish today. So let's jump right in. First, let's talk about just the program overview, specifically School Food Solutions and our partnership, a little bit about California Universal Meals. We'll also talk meal reimbursement rates. And then I want to share a little bit about just the vendor market in general. So here's the West Coast School Food Solutions team. Hopefully if these faces don't look familiar, the names probably will. We've got Grace and Andy on the eligibility side. We've got Kelly, who's our director of claims. And then we've got myself, Claire, and Tess on the client support side. We're all great contacts to support you. We are all people that have worked in the charter school space and operations. So we've worn the 50 hats you all are currently trying to balance on your head right now. We provide you with year-round food service consulting. We support you with eligibility management, whether that's an FRL form or a universal benefit application. We support with procurement, whether that is buying broadline food products or procuring a vendor FSMC. We do staff training. You're in one right now. Welcome. And we're also your support, communication, thought partner, good cop and or bad cop as you navigate this program with your vendor in the state. None of that has changed. We are still here for you, and that we do all of those things. We try to be as accessible as we can. And as you get bigger and you need more, we've also structured to match that. So this is not new for this year, but if you weren't aware of these, these are the two systems we have, which is number one, our eligibility team. So this is the forms at School Food Solutions. This email address is probably one of the longest ones we've had. This is our secure email box for sending both data back and forth, scanning in applications, asking specific eligibility questions. These are also the people that will be sending you status lists this time of year. So if we are processing either your UBAs, your universal benefit applications, or your free and reduced lunch applications, you want to know who turned them in, who qualified for what, and who you're still waiting on paperwork back from. So on a weekly basis, this email address will be sending you those reports. It's also the email address this time of year if we have a point of sale sync issue, if we have a data issue, or if we have anything else that's probably not working right. Grace over there has been frantically reaching out, trying to get everything buttoned up before your start of school. So this is an email address to keep your eyes out for. We also have our claims team, which is Kelly, and we're actually going to be hiring one new person this year. Just as you can imagine, everything got more complicated, including requesting reimbursements from the state and federal government. And so we are building out our claims team to move faster for you. This is an email address you can both send claim questions to, but more importantly, if we have claim questions about you, that's probably coming from claims@schoolfoodsolutions.org. Also, each month, once we submit your claim, the most important part is how much money are you going to get? This is the email address that those reconciliation slips, claim summaries, and year-to-date accounts come from. And so this will be the one you'll want to search if you have finance questions. In addition to both of these, most of you have either a periodic or monthly call set up with myself, Claire, or someone else on the team. With those calls, you can expect one of our team norms and values is that every call has an agenda. So whether you see it or not, we come with a structured plan to have a conversation with you. We're not here to waste your time. We also want to document that so that if we shared resources, if we answered questions, if we are monitoring progress on a challenge, like we've got detailed notes of what we talked about and where things are progressing. You have access to those. This is also this is a Google document. If we have a shared phone call, it's usually linked in that calendar invite, but it's not going to change. So this is something that you can bookmark and save. It's also going to be your little database of all the things we've talked about. It's also a great place if you, God forbid, you wake up at midnight and have a food service question. Obviously, please don't call me, but you may want to write that down and we can talk about it on our next call. This is a great place for you to list your questions out. You've basically put the agenda together for me. I'm going to answer all those questions the next time we talk. So if you have that document but forgotten about it, find it and bookmark it. If you've never seen it and want to know where it is, just email us and we'll send you a copy. That all being said, we don't cook or serve the food. I think for 99% of us on this phone call, we're working with a food vendor. So we've got kind of an interesting triangle of responsibilities here. So first and foremost, total ownership of the program is under the School Food Authority. That's you as the SFA, right? You're the one that sends the emails to the state of California. You're the one that gets the check sent to them. You're the one that actually serves the food, and you're the ones that count it when the kids are passing through the line. We're your compliance part. You're doing the day-to-day pieces. School Food Solutions, we're doing your annual compliance. We're doing paperwork and support in the background. We're doing claims and resource management for you. So whether that's filling out forms or drafting documents, that's us. We'll help with things like your CEP application and establishing your CEP groups. We do the trainings, and we serve as your liaison with your vendor as well. But again, I don't have a kitchen, or at least I don't have a commercial kitchen. We partner with your vendor, right? That's your Revolution Foods, your Lunch Masters, your Unity Meals. These are the companies that specialize in providing USDA compliant meals and menus, right? They are the chefs behind where this food comes from. They are also our logistics experts, right? It's one thing to cook food. It's another thing to figure out how to portion, package, and deliver it to you safely and on time every single day. I'm very glad that is a big job, right? So I'm very glad we have partners that can do that. They're also the ones that are going to be able to provide the required nutrition backup documentation for audits. And they're also going to be the ones we outline exactly what we need in contracts with them. And so it's their obligation to follow those pieces, right? When we use federal dollars to procure something, we have to have a structured agreement. All of us have that in place, and you'll know for sure you do once you go through a procurement review. And that's where our vendor is a specialist in understanding those regulations and, doing their best to deliver, right? It's never perfect, but I think we've got some pretty reliable vendors in our area that are doing a good job. That all being said, is this is a big balancing act here, right? And so one of the things I want to also just let you all know is we can best support you when we're included in emails and conversations, and that's okay and that's appropriate, right? So if one example would be if your finance back office or maybe the CDE or an auditor, they may have very specific questions for you. It's okay to say, hey, I picked up the phone, but I don't have those answers for you right now. Can I include the rest of the people on my team that can support with your requests? That's I think, again, anyone that's in those positions, they just want to get the right answer, so that they can move along with the projects they're working on. And I think they're usually pretty accommodating for that. And we can best support you when we're brought in early and often. So what I also want to just make clear to everyone is don't worry about our email boxes. We're very good at processing things quickly. So you're welcome to CC and forward us questions. Please put us on replies. I may not always respond if it's not a direct question to me. So number one, if you need a response from me, call that out in an email. But also, it is helpful for me to watch and manage, because when I see things going off the rails, and you might have seen this for me, you might get a phone call like, hey, we should probably chat with them. Let's schedule a meeting, right? I want to help prevent problems I see coming to make your lives smoother. With that all being said, you can invite us to existing meetings. You can call and text us with questions. And you can absolutely always, if we don't have a scheduled call, ask for a meeting with us, right? And we're happy to talk through any of your problems. It's so much easier for us to help you mitigate and manage these things up front than to deal with something that's on fire, right? And I think as operators, as managers, as school administrators, so many things in our day are just on fire, right? That we are metaphorical firefighters in our job. If we can prevent one more, I think that makes everyone's life a little bit easier. And so that's really where you can get your money's worth and utilize school food, is we can be the proactive piece and also the doers on a lot of this. So I really want to make that clear that, like, don't worry about sending too many emails to us. That's literally what we do all day long. All right. One of the things we also do is stay up to speed in California. I'm very excited for the updates in California this year because I really don't have many. And so I think that's kind of the biggest news that's out there is there are not major changes to this program for this year. So California Universal Meals has been fully funded. Again, it's part of the annual budget process, so they'll need to fund it yearly. But California is deeply committed to this program, and I don't see it getting rolled back or defunded anytime soon. For all intents and purposes, it's here to stay. This is, the program started in 2023. It has three main pillars. Um, and I think it's interesting to revisit those schools because, pillar two was making sure all high poverty schools are required to participate in a provision program. Well, box check, that's already been done. If you qualify, we got you in there. Um, we've pillar one, make meals available. That started years ago. We are making breakfast and lunch available at no cost, and the state of California is backfilling the funding regardless of income levels for family. And then the pillar three is providing the reimbursement to do that, right? Like they funded it, and so we have some of the highest reimbursement rates in the country for this meal program, and it's allowed us to just both weather the storm of price fluctuations and also just do more within our programs, right? We know nothing is cheap in California, and so that's made a big difference, is having this program be fully funded, which again, still happening, still going forward. Meals are free for all for everyone next school year. And also, part of the federal program is that there is a cost of a mandated cost increase to the federal rates. So California hasn't officially pushed out the numbers, and depending what your school's income level qualifications are, these numbers may be slightly different. But in the most general estimate, we're looking at a 3% COLA. That's if we serve both a reimbursable breakfast and lunch, that's 27 additional cents. That's coming in per day per that pair of meals that get served. With lunch, we're looking darn close to $6. We're at roughly $5.80, 80 something cents in there, depending where you land. If you're severe need breakfast, we've crossed the $4 mark when we include the California Prop 98 fund. So what we're looking at is we take the USDA rate, whether it's paid, reduced, or free, with the California backfill, everything is paid at the federal free rate. So $4.87 for lunch. Severe need breakfast is $3.05, and snack is $1.30 if we qualify for the snack program. On top of the federal funds and the state backfill to make those all at the free rate, California also adds roughly another dollar and a penny to that. And that's what gets us to our pretty comfortable, rates at high fives and low fours for breakfast and lunch. This has really exceeded what we've seen our vendors come in at. And so some people's contracts, some vendors had held prices steady this year. They didn't increase them. Some vendors lowered prices to be more competitive. And other vendors, we saw modest price increases, but nowhere near exceeding these reimbursement rates unless you're a very special rural small school situation. That's really good news for us because, again, that's money that we can put back into, and we'll talk about sort of the other finance options, but money we can put back into keeping our programs, in the black, if you will. In addition, there is still grant funds out here. So I debated deleting this slide because there's so many caveats to this, but the two big things is for the schools that received the non-competitive and KIT funds in 2022, the deadline was still this past June to spend it, although our understanding is that they are not recouping any of that funds. If you still have KIT fundings, no time like the present. Put it into your program. If you haven't been able to spend it all yet, again, they like to say either spent or encumbered. And so as long as we've got a plan to spend it, and all of us nod along together, we've got a plan to spend it. We'll figure it out along the way. You're fine to keep that money. It still is earmarked for your meal program, but those KIT funds are yours, and let's find a place to spend those. There was a final email submission that should have been submitted by the end of June. The challenge with that is it had a very specific link that you needed to click through. So if your email went to spam or someone that doesn't work there anymore, it might have got lost. I bring that up because you may be receiving reminders, emails this time of year. If you get one of those, forward it along to us. We can help you. If you can find the link in your email, we can submit it for you, or we can help you reach out to the KIT Fund team to request a new submission link. All of that to say is, again, it doesn't change at no point are they going to recoup those funds. At least that's our understanding as of now. The other piece with KIT funding, there are new grants that are happening, but these are not the non-competitive, here's $100,000 check sort of grants. I think that's a once in a lifetime sort of experience. It was wonderful when we all got that funding. I don't know if we're going to see that ever again. The KIT grants that are out now will be competitive, meaning that we need to both have a plan and write up a grant application. Now, that's still worth doing, but the plan usually will need the challenge here is the plan needs to involve local procurement and prepping food on site. And not all of us have the facilities, the staffing, the time or the will to do that. And so I just want to throw that out there is School Food Solutions is here to help you prepare those grants, but we need to do a little bit of soul searching first of, are you in the position to actually utilize those? And I know there's a handful of us, handful of us on this call that we probably will talk in more detail about that. But if you're not ready to start washing and prepping produce that came straight from a farm, or using the grant to put in the infrastructure like vegetable prep sinks, 3-comp sinks, grease traps, a lot of that kitchen infrastructure that's going to be needed to receive and prep that sort of produce, these may not be the grants for you, because the challenge is if we get the money, the project stalls out, they will ask for the money back on these. And so want to put that caveat out there. Also just want to plant the seed to let's start thinking and being creative. What are the projects we could do if we're awarded those funds? The application's not open yet, so you've got time. We'll see those emails this fall. And if you're interested, we can talk more on our scheduled phone calls. But all of that to say, wrapping up with the free meals for all piece, free meals for, and I think I actually said this, I called it, it's free for all quickly, but free meals for all does not mean a free for all, right? So it means there's no cost to our students or to our families. We are still paying for what we order through our vendor, and we're only reimbursed for what we serve. And so we still want to be mindful of our excess, our waste, the meals we're providing out, and we still need to count and claim them in a compliant way. So the Universal Meals Program is not separate from the National School Lunch Program. It's built on the back of the National School Lunch Program. All those federal rules still apply to us. And if you just spoiler alert, that's going to be a theme today. We'll talk more about that. All right. Last thing I want to talk about is just food provider choice. If any of you went to RFP with me this year, you probably got noticed you got a lot of them, and that's really exciting because that has not been what we have seen in the past. So no matter what model you're operating, the market is getting, even with food prices increasing, with fuel prices going up again, that's going to have larger ramifications for the whole industry. But as far as people wanting to provide food to schools, whether it's local farmers looking for new contracts, whether it's vended meal providers looking to expand their footprint, whether it's food service management companies from out of state looking at target markets in California, or even just creations of co-ops, piggyback contracts, there are more and more options out there, and that they're starting to get more competitive. Not all of them are created equal. There's some vendors that I don't think are ready for prime time, that I think that are still learning the rules and regulations of this very complex program. There are other vendors that are really excelling, that have taken this opportunity with the growth of some of our schools that are expanding in the changing market to really carve out a nice niche for themselves. And so I say that to, if you're on the fence or thinking, or if you're, or even if you're at your 5 years and you're required to go out to bid, it's a better time than it's been in the past years. Whether it's we want to find a new vendor, we want to make the jump to doing some self preparation op work in house. We've got those options out there, and so it's a fun new conversation that just wasn't really in the cards a few years ago. Pausing there, if anyone's brave enough to come off mute or type in the chat, any questions on our first section before we move on to the very fun finance and budget section? All right, I'm not going to slow us down. Let's get into what we all came here for: finance regulation. All right, we're going to talk about important considerations. We're going to talk about what's income, what's our expenses, and then we're going to talk about everyone's favorite: record keeping. So let's just start with, whether you're, a lot of us are probably utilizing a back office. Hopefully you've got some sort of accountant. It's not just you fumbling with QuickBooks on a weekly basis. But the overarching theme within this program is we are receiving federal and state tax dollars that are restricted funds that have more restrictive purchasing guidelines. We should be separating these, whether it's a separate bank account, a Fund 13, a resource code within our general fund. Think of these like SPED dollars. Again, most of us are probably utilizing a back office partner, like a DMS or an Icon or a CSMC one, a company like that. That's great, right? There's too much. That's why you partner with us too, right? There's too many regulations to keep in any one person's head, and having a team that understands that, for the most part, we can, they should know how to do it. Although we work closely with all of those companies, because even being school accounting experts, they still have food accounting questions. It's just very complex. But the idea is, just know that what you're going to buy your colored pencils with is not the same money you're buying your food with. There is a separation. Where does that money come from? Well, it's plain and simple, your revenue here is your reimbursable meal claims. Again, the CDE is filling in those gaps, so that for us in California, we are getting that are, or I should say, at public and charter schools, if there's any of my private school friends um, on this call, it's you both know, and unfortunately, nothing has changed. You're getting just the federal reimbursement, but for our district schools and charter schools, you're getting made whole and plus some. Um, but you're paid back for the meals you serve, not the actual program costs for your food, right? So it's not like you send your expenses and they cut you a check for what you spent. This is you buy meals and then you serve them and you get paid back for what you serve. Now we get paid back more than we pay for the meals. So we've got a little bit of cushion there, but that it still is important to manage that. Meal counting and claiming and doing that correctly is how you bring the money back into your program. Um, because you're reimbursed for what you serve. Also, we want to do this in a timely manner, and so both the both entering your claims in and finalizing your claims, because again, surprise, surprise, the CDE and the USDA are not super quick about cutting and mailing checks again. So we're thinking about, from the end of your month, it could be upwards of a, 30 to 60-day lag time. And then at the end of 60 days, you're capped from submitting that claim anyway. And so you do want to stay on top of those pieces. Let's talk about, I think one thing that we had not talked about in years past, we just always did it in the background, but I want to be a little bit more explicit about how our claims process works, why it's a good process, and also what you don't have to do and what you get back from us. So when you enter meals into your point of sale, and that's the really important part too, is our team should be entering meals at the time of service, at the end of the line. Like, everyone on this call has a point of sale system. Most of us are using Mealtime, which I think is the most flexible one. Can run on any old laptop you have, can run it as long as it runs the Chrome browser. It can run on Wi-Fi, and you can enter the meals very easily in real time. As long as once those meals get into Mealtime, our claims team at the start of every new month is able to go look at the month prior. We are then running reports to compare your enrollment, your participation, and we look at your vendor invoice to triangulate all of those to both look for accuracy and look for gaps. We then assemble that into a monthly claim to submit for payment through the CDE. So the CDE both processes the state and federal funds and sends them back to you. And once that gets submitted, someone on your team, or a group of people on your team, are going to receive a detailed year-to-date summary. That's kind of what you're seeing on the screen here. It's going to show you some really important stuff. It's going to show you first total meals claimed and the dollar amount there. It's going to show you the total meals ordered by number and cost of those. It'll then, give you a break even of the total revenues. Did you make money? Did you lose money? And then you can look at those month over month to see trends, right? And so we can look, and then we can spot, was November a weird month because of the way the breaks lined up? Was December being an extra short month? Did we have too many parties and did we over order? You can both spot trends, but you can also see on a month to month basis, just in general, what direction am I going? Am I over ordering? Am I under ordering? If you're not receiving these, let me know. We'll add you. You may not have been on the initial distribution list. We can get you on that. I also told our people in the food. The same slide was in my food handlers training. And I said, listen, I know you're not the accountant. You're not going to be booking receivables. But if you haven't seen this report, it's probably worth looking at it. So you may want to share this with your food service team so that they have a better idea of the dollars and cents of it, right? So if they over ordered and a couple grades were out on a field trip, it's not just that they had to like do extra work to throw meals out. Like, there's a real fiscal consequence to that, and those are things we want to be mindful of. So I think this is also a great way for you to check in with your team, but just know you're going to be seeing these on a monthly basis. And if you're not, we should get you on the list so you can. Or take you off if you're tired of looking at finances. You can delegate to someone else too. But again, I think this is going to be super useful information for you to keep a real-time grasp on what the trends of your program. All right. Let's also talk about, so we kit funds are the most exciting grants because those are the state specific ones with the least requirements. And again, I love those. They're just they're not they're more competitive now than they were in the past. But we also have other money out there. Um, so the kitchen infrastructure grants are general fund dollars. They're very flexible. We can spend that on infrastructure. The USDA also has the breakfast expansion grant and equipment expansion grants. Those will come out both in the fall and the spring, respectively. They're not open yet. These are, I think they range from five to $15,000 is a common award. But if you need a new oven and a refrigerator, if you're looking to get a milk cooler and an ice machine, if you're looking to maybe buy a specialty piece of equipment or a enhanced serving line, these are reoccurring grants that happen annually. So if you don't get one this year, you always get another bite at the apple next year. And it's a great way to add equipment to your meal program. The other thing is there are reimbursement grants, which are, it feels more like trickery than a grant. And that's the fresh fruit and vegetable program. They'll send you an email saying that a grant has opened, but this is a reimbursement grant, which means you need to serve samples of fresh fruits and vegetables to all of your little kiddos, give them education, and do this outside of the meal period. And then you can submit for 90% reimbursement on the cost of your food. It's a really cool grant if that's what you want to do. But if that's not your dream, and again, there's plenty of ways that you can do that in a pretty manageable way. We can help you do that. But if that's not what you wanted to do, the reimbursement style grant is not going to add any revenue to your program. And so again, it's great that it's out there, but it's not the grant funds. It's the opposite end of the spectrum from your general fund kit style grants. With all of these, if you want to apply for a grant, School Food Solutions can help you. But what we need from you to kind of have the best opportunity to both receive it and actually finalize it is be realistic about what you're going to apply for, right? Because we can ask for anything, and if we submit a really exciting plan, they'll probably give us the money. The challenge is they don't give you 100% of the money up front, and you actually have to implement that plan in a specific time period. And so that's one of those things that, it's not just signing up for a check, it's signing up for another project. So again, we can kind of help you scope both what would be realistic and useful for you, so that you actually put it in there, right? Like, I think that the best part of these USDA grants is you can do incremental pieces over the year to continually expand your program. And we can be very strategic about that and help you get there. So just know that that's out there. The other type of income, this is the less fun type of income, is our non-programmatic food. And so I think we've talked about competitive foods before. And that's anything that's sold on campus during the school day. But if your meal program is selling, whether it's snack bars, whether it's adult meals, whether it's your reimbursable entrees, but just a la carte, those are all things that are not under. This could also just be a la carte milk too, or anything that is not part of the reimbursable compliant meal is a non-programmatic. It's a competitive food. It's something that, from what we are hearing, the state is going to start having a sharper eye on reviewing. We don't know how they're going to do it, but auditors last year had basically insinuated that if you are paying for food out of your child nutrition program and giving it away, that outside of a reimbursable meal combination, that is not allowable and will need to account for those costs someday. So that would be, if we're giving food to teachers, that we either need to charge the teachers for that, or the general fund needs to cover those. If we are just handing out milks to students, we should be tracking that and handing those out. In general, that sounds less fun, right? Because for our vended meal schools, you all know there's extra food every day. And it would be a real bummer to both charge a teacher for food and throw a bunch of that same food out, right? And so a lot of what we are doing with our non-programmatic food is we are just not selling it from a snack bar. We're putting it into we're allowing it to go to the share bin and then be given away from there. That's still all right. But a lot of you are getting bigger, more sophisticated programs. And if you're saying, listen, the share bin is not a reliable source of like the extra food that some of our kids just want to milk. Some of our teachers just want to buy the entree. Can we do that? And the answer is yes. You've got the technology. Mealtime can accept cash and payments. It can do all of that. We just need to build that within your program. So for the most part, many of us, as long as we're not selling food, as long as we're not selling junk food, we're okay. If we're selling anything, or it needs to that and it's paid for by the child nutrition program, we need to account for that. And so again, we don't need to go into more detail on the call today, but if you have a larger student store, a larger snack bar, that's something that we'll want to coordinate and make sure that you're both not, because the ultimate thing that the federal government does not want us doing is using dollars meant for meals for free and reduced students to subsidize food for in other areas, right? So if they give us money to give a free student a lunch, we can't also use some of that money to give a teacher meal, right? That's not what the intention was, and so we need to have some accounting separately for those. So there's sort of two approaches there: is don't do it, or don't do it through your child nutrition program, or come up with clear structured accounting guidelines, and we can help you. We can advise on both of those. And building off of that is, with that, we need to manage. So we need to manage that money, right? So that would be if we are selling second meals, selling adult meals, selling a la carte items, it's tracking those funds and making sure we're not subsidizing with other funds. And also, even if we're not doing any of those, given the higher reimbursement rates and some of the very competitive contracts we may have, we also don't want to create a surplus. So that's the mo money, mo problems challenge, which is we cannot have more than 6 months operating costs within our child nutrition fund. This is something we should be. So for the most part, I think many of us, once we factor in appropriate salaries and benefits, we draw down that child nutrition balance to zero. This is so many of us on this call, this is a non-issue. But if you're not allocating salary, and if you're only putting your vendor invoices into your child nutrition account, you may occur a balance. And so this is something to check on annually with your back office, and we can help review general ledgers and balance sheets with you to see kind of where you've landed on the money side of it. But we don't want to have more than 6 months operating expenses. If you do get to that point, well, great news, you got money to spend. Let's talk together to be strategic of how to spend that down, so that you are using the money you're receiving to put into the food for your kids, right? The whole idea is not to hoard this; it's to buy food for kiddos, right? And so, if we find ourselves in that situation, it's not a bad thing. It's just we need to reallocate some money. We need to spend more in different places, and School Food Solutions can help you strategize with that. On the budget and forecasting side, so this, depending where you're at. So if this slide's more for our folks that are new to the program or new to the school, is we're ordering meals by the number of students we think we're going to eat, right? So we're not ordering pounds of carrots. We're not ordering, packages of ground beef. We're ordering number of entrees, and our vendor brings us the components that go along with it. And so, for the beginning of school, if we've expanded a grade, or if we are open to new school, or we're just got a blank slate, where do we start? And so, well, here I can tell you what you're not going to do. You're not going to serve 100% of the students, right? We can't even get 100% of kids to come every day, and you're not going to serve zero, because someone definitely is going to want some food, right? And so what we've seen on average overall is a good starting point is probably 50% participation at lunch and 30% at breakfast. Now, if you have historical data from another school site, or if you can talk to a neighboring school in that same area, you might be able to fine tune those numbers a little bit more. But what I would caution anyone from doing at the beginning of the school year is saying, I don't know, so I'm going to assume everyone will eat, and I'll order for 100% of enrollment, or I'll order for 90% of enrollment. I think that's, even in our rosiest scenarios, that's a number that's really, really hard to reach. So if you think you're up there, then, as long as you have maybe you've surveyed families, maybe you have some data that kind of gets you to some justification for that. But if you don't know where to start, I think that 50 and 30 for 50% lunch participation, 30% breakfast is a pretty safe place to be. Again, because um, waste has a cost, right? So it's not just the meals you're not getting reimbursed for, it's also just someone's got to carry that. Someone's got to put that, we've got dumpster fees, we've got hauling fees, we need a bigger trash can, right? So it's more work. It's not just the food cost, it's the cost to deal with, all of the challenges that come with needing to dispose, 30 little boxes of milk or 100 extra enchiladas, right? Um, do we get rodents right now? Are we paying Orkin? Like there are costs that we can, having too much waste just trickles into. Finally, so here's best case scenario is um, you're efficient with how you order. You've got a good contract and you have retained earnings in your child nutrition account. And you have, so we obviously have sets of hands that are helping us do these things. So let's figure out kind of how we can allocate those salaries. For the most, so um, if you're not encroaching on your general fund, so meaning like say we're not breaking even, then it still makes sense to pay those, it's less restrictive to just pay those salaries out of the general fund. Less will be audited in your child nutrition side, right? You're just moving money back and forth if you don't have a surplus. But assuming you do have a surplus, we can assume again, we may want to talk specifically just depending on your situation, but we've got either dedicated or full-time employees. Like think of those as a single cost objective. They can be paid. So if one person is 100% out of child nutrition, they can be paid with, we can just put their salary in child nutrition funds. Their job description should outline what they do in the kitchen. And since we are paying them with child nutrition funds, they should meet all of the professional standards, hiring standards and tracking requirements there too. They are a true food service employee. Then if we are doing, so but say we've got a paraprofessional or someone that is either a split part-time or shared role, those are the employees that we're going to need to have some sort of our personal activity report or some sort of equivalent documentation to say, I'm of the 8 hours they work a day, 3 of them are in the kitchen, and here's how I document those. That would also be, it's similar to potentially how like potentially your SPED employees might be paid too. So you may already have a system that you can utilize to do this. And that's a great way. Again, if we're utilizing restricted dollars from our child nutrition account to cover these costs, we're freeing up dollars in our general fund that was going to food service salaries when they can go back to other educational programs. This is also, again, for our back offices that may be doing our HR. They're the experts at this and they can help you set up. Again, you may already have those protocols, time cards, those sort of things to properly document this. So basically, you can just pay salaries from different places. However, for the most part, our largest expense is going to be our food and our equipment. Um, so what we can easily pay out of our child nutrition fund are our kitchen equipment. These are our fridges, our ovens, our point of sale contracts, and repair and service. Again, all of these things have moving parts, and those need to be serviced in oils. And it's a lot easier to service those, or even if we need to do a repair, we can cover those with our child nutrition funds. So those are also things that are allowable costs that may incur on an annual basis. Um, this program, so if you're getting audited this year, you will be talking to me tomorrow. And if I didn't invite you to a training tomorrow, it means you're not on the audit list. So congrats. So excited to see all my friends tomorrow, and congrats if you don't get to see me. But all of that to say is, if it's not this year, it's going to be in the next 5 years. Um, California runs a 5-year audit cycle. We need to keep everything. So the federal guidelines is 3+ years or until your next audit, whatever is longest. In California, California's big. I think we're keeping that 5-year audit cycle. assume 5+ years. You're going to need to keep your child nutrition paperwork from everything from audit to audit, right? So it's um, uh, anything that is, since you're past your audit, anything from that time to your next audit is free to be audited. Um, these are going to be your transit logs, your production record documents. These are going to be your DC lists, your FRL applications. It could be determination letters. School Food Solutions keeps all the data that we have on our end from you. So if you're missing something, you can always ask us. You probably also, because again, you're keeping your cum files and some of those other things for 8+ years. My guess is you already have long-term storage for a lot of these places. Just carve out a couple other bankers boxes to put this stuff in. For the most part, at the end of the school year, you're safe to put, and once you close your books, you're safe to put all of this stuff in store. You need to keep it. You are not likely going to reference it anytime soon. So this does not need to live in a shelf in your office. This doesn't need to be in your kitchen for past years. Again, we need to keep it, but we probably don't need to keep it handy. So, and again, I think for almost all of our facility spaces at a premium. So have a process to archive this stuff, but you don't need this at your fingertips. And also empower your kitchen teams to, and this was another thing I had talked about yesterday on the training, is clean that kitchen. If it's stuff you don't need, again, don't shred it, don't throw it out, but it doesn't need to be readily available at your fingertips. You don't need to be stubbing your toe on a shelf with data from 3 or 4 years ago. It's not helpful. Um, any questions on record keeping or finances there? I realize that was a big overview for a big topic, but I want everyone to have enough to be dangerous. All right, no questions. Hopefully the mic is still on. You hear me. Um, let's talk procurement. I'm going to go quickly through procurement because this is going to be specific for everyone, but I'm going to hit a couple of points hard, which is um, no matter what model you're doing, if you're on the NSLP program, you need to buy stuff for it, and when you're paying for it with tax dollars, right? And so there are procurement reviews, regardless of what your board or your school may have put in more restrictive procurement guidelines, but at the very minimum, you either need to, for your food dollars, you need to default to the federal, or clearly outline your additional procurement thresholds. But assuming your board or your policies don't have anything additional, here's sort of the new waters we're swimming in for buying under the child nutrition program. Good news, everything got more expensive, and at least they raised the limits. So in California, if you want to make a micro purchase, so this is I'm going to the grocery store. A lot of times this would be common things if we're buying stuff on Amazon, that could be a micro purchase. Honestly, this could also be even a piece of equipment, because in California we can self-certify our micro purchase contracts up to $50,000. And so for what our schools may need, $50,000 is a pretty good chunk of change. You can buy a nice oven for less than 50K. Micro purchases cannot be reoccurring. So, right. So this can't be, oh, well, I only pay my vendor 10 grand a month. So I'll just say every month my vendor invoices a micro purchase. No, that doesn't get you out of those sort of purchases. Anything for things like that, we would either need to do what used to be called a small purchase, now called a simplified acquisition. They raised that up to $350,000. The bad news with that is you've got to go with the lowest price. So simplified acquisition is good for something you might be requesting quotes on. I want to buy a delivery van, or I want to buy a Dodge delivery van for my food service program. I called 3 dealerships and told them the year, make, and model of the vehicle I wanted and asked for a delivery quote of that vehicle. I got 3 different prices back. I selected the lowest price to purchase. That's a simplified acquisition. We're looking solely on price, and we're looking to survey the market and get 3 quotes. And when for things like a van or a refrigerator or a computer, things that are a model number that you understand the specs and you just want to buy it from the most, responsible and lowest price vendor, that's where simplified acquisition is useful. But if we've gone out to bid for a food vendor, price is not the most important threshold or not the most important data point, right? Like, are they easy to deal with? Do they have good software? Do we like the food, right? Like those are all really important things that we want to take into consideration on top of price for our purchase. And so, in any time, regardless of the total dollar amount, if we want to be able um, to um, to consider multiple factors to make a decision on who to go with. That is when we are doing a formal purchase. That's when School Food Solutions is usually involved. That's when we're publishing an ad in the newspaper. We have a request for proposal document, right? So we're not requesting a price. We're requesting a proposal, a proposed solution for the problem we have given, right? And then from there, once we try the food and interview the school and read their proposal that they've given us, we score them on a rubric, and price is still one of the categories we weight, but we're able to go with a more expensive vendor if we know that they've got a better product that sort of aligns with the things we've weighted in our scoring rubric. So if you just need to buy something that's got a brand name or a model number, simplified acquisition is great, is the easiest way to do that. If you need to just go to the store and get something, right? It's probably not that expensive. You need to go get a gallon of milk, just go to the closest grocery store, right? That's a micro purchase. But when you want to select a vendor that you have many specifications and many goals you want them to hit, that is when we write a well-worded formal procurement so that you get choice and decision on what you're doing. You're not locked in with going with the lowest price. Um, kind of went over So we went over examples there. Any questions on the procurement side? So I guess last thing, since mainly it's vendors that we talk about. So the best time to do that is in the spring. Again, the vendor, they don't know what food prices are going to be. They don't know their returning clients or new clients. So they don't know where they're running routes. So it's very difficult to go. If you don't want them to start in the fall, you really can't go out to bid in the fall. A general timeline of what we'd like, if you want us to handle the RFP for you, what we think is an appropriate timeline is we start to discuss it in January. We then finalize and really put pen to paper in February, so that in March we are publishing the document. We are running any sort of tasting events or meet and greets or tours in the month of April. That gives time for the vendor to then go back to their offices, sharpen their pencils, and write out pricing and the full proposal. And then in the month of either late April or May, we are scoring, evaluating, and awarding those contracts. And then that gives us May, June, and July to implement and roll out the new vendor. So if you are thinking, this might be the year we want to go out to bid, or if you're on year 5 of your contract, again, contracts are for 1 year with 4 extensions. So every 5 years you're going out either way. We'll contact you if you're at year 5, but that's when we're going to take care of that. So if you're thinking about going out to bid, we can discuss it in the fall, but the planning will really start in the spring. All right. Let's talk about wellness policies real quick. Raise thumbs up, raise a hand, put it in the chat. Do you have one? Have you read one recently? Have you had a wellness committee meeting in the last 18 months? See a thumbs up? Yeah, a couple. Good. Outdated. Spoiler alert, most people's are outdated. Nothing's really changed in them. So as far as the regulations go, so you have to establish one. It's part of the NSLP program. It's got specific things you need to include in it. If you utilized a template from School Food Solutions or from the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, or even the CDE, it's kind of all the same template, and they have all of the same things in it. You want to customize it to your school, but for the most part, the regulations here, unlike other pieces of the program, the regulations have not changed on the wellness side. Although the specifics in what you wrote in your wellness policy, you may want to update or evolve based on how your school's changed, right? So you may have either tightened up or loosened up how you do fundraising. You may have your PE curriculum may have changed. Like those are all things that would be in there that you may want to update. So it's worth giving a review of annually. But for the most part, if if you have one, or if for the most part, if you're on this phone call and work with us, you've got one somewhere. It might still be a draft just saved in my shared drive, but we made one for you at some point. And if you haven't put a lot of TLC into it, that's okay. But now might be the time to start. Um, you're also with that wellness committee is they you should have a or with your wellness policy you should have a wellness committee. It's who makes the decisions of what goes in there. It's the committee. And this we say should meet, typically 5 to 10 people. Honestly, the closer to the five side's a lot easier to wrangle. It's going to be an advisory group. It's required by the child nutrition program. This doesn't have to be about food at all. This could be about physical activity. This could be about wellness. This could be about mental health. This could be about, it could be about a whole host of other things. And it can incorporate school food as well. It doesn't need to be the school food director. So if you've got your school may already have a wellness center or a wellness coordinator. You may have a nurse. Not every school does it, but some schools are still lucky enough to have either a nurse or a health teacher. Um, those can all be people that could lead this or be part of this, and they should be setting this is something that can work for you, because my guess is that you're already doing some of this work or all of this work in one or multiple other places. And this is a great way to unify it, because again, you have to have this. It's not going anywhere. And this is a nice way to unify all of those efforts under one policy and put a structure on how you revise it, and revisit it annually. It's also something that you can, again, tap someone else to delegate this to, right? I think one of the challenges with any part of the child nutrition program, because it is restricted dollars and it's this separate federal requirement and it's these different set of laws, that it sometimes it feels siloed from the larger school operation we have. And anything we can do to bring this back into our school operation is usually pretty helpful. And getting more people involved in your wellness committee is a great way to do it. In addition to that, you should be hosting a triennial assessment. What is a triennial assessment? Well, there's not a lot in the official legislation. There's not a lot of rules. The Dairy Council put out some best practices, and we've also got kind of a summary of what we think you should be doing. But the general idea is that every 3 years, you're doing a deeper dive to review your policy, other model policies, assessing what else is out there, and then proposing and making revisions and publishing that to your larger community. So if you've never done one, or if you haven't done one in a while, maybe this is the way you reboot your wellness committee, is just just hit the reset button. Do a triennial assessment. The way you know it's a triennial assessment is because that's the top of the letterhead. You just have a meeting agenda, and the top of the meeting agenda is triennial assessment. Now it's become an official meeting. That's kind of the only thing the auditors look for on this. So this is not a process that is audited for complexity or quality. They just want to see that you're meeting these benchmarks of hosting these meetings. And so I think both that gives you a lot of leeway to either do a very quick version of it if it's not a priority for the school year, or it gives you a lot of leeway to design it to really work for what your school and your community wants to focus on. Because again, it's your policy, and so really start with the template, but design it to work for you. If you are one of my audit friends, my guidance becomes a lot more urgent, and we'll be talking about this for the school year. Again, the quality part of it is you still got a lot of flexibility, but the documentation side of it, that will be part of your audit box. And so this is the time of year is let's schedule our first meeting. If we haven't done a triennial assessment, let's make our first meeting a triennial assessment. I've got template agendas. I've got sample documents. I've got all the paperwork to get you started. What you can think about today and moving forward as the school year starts is who are the 3 to 5 to 7 people that I want to tap to help me lead this committee. And so that's the big homework assignment on this side is if we have our wellness people, remind them they're on the committee. If that committee's kind of dissolved, let's start the process of forming a new one. Questions there? It's also one, there's a lot of good examples. Again, this is a nationwide requirement. There's a lot of good examples out there if you Google it. So again, you don't need to just copy the test from online, but that's another thing that everyone is required to do this, and they're required to publish it. So most of these people put it on their website. So it's one of those things that there's just like a bazillion examples out there. And I'm assuming AI scraped it all and is consolidated for you somewhere. And so um, the look to your friends online. And I think there's some other resources there too, if you want other examples. All right. I think we talked heavy on compliance. We're now going to move into sort of the second part of the call. I'm moving a little more quickly on these slides. They're going to be dense, but I'm going to pull out the big highlights for y'all. You'll both get the recording of this training and the deck and the resources that go with it. So again, this is all things that we can also continue to revisit throughout the school year. But I want to talk just sort of the general compliance calendar. So as we're starting the school year, you can think about like, what am I managing for this school year? I'm going to briefly talk audits. So for the folks that aren't on the audit list, you can know what you might be getting into in the next few years. And then for our folks that are on the audit list, you're going to know all about it tomorrow. And, for the rest of the year, it's a whole process. We're going to talk about then kind of our monthly and daily tasks. Again, I don't think you're going to be doing these, but for the folks that are managing other folks, like what should you see your team doing when you're checking in on them? So in general, here's the big things that any school food director will be doing or overseeing any given school year. Now, the nice part is with School Food Solutions, we support you with most of these. So the first one is your SFA application that's completed at the beginning of the school year. I know you know about this because the CDE has been just barraging people with emails. Here's the good news. School Food Solutions does this for you. We should have all of the information we need with the exception of the race and ethnicity data of your new student population for 26-27. Claire had been emailing folks out that we still needed that from. So you may see an email from that. If you don't, we already have all the information we need to move forward with that application. And just know that School Food Solutions handles that. Also, just know that the CDE, when they send reminder emails, they tend to send them to everyone. So if you get one that says it's due at the end of the month, yours is probably already, or sorry, they're not. There's no due date on these, but if you're seeing reminder emails, they're usually general emails, and this is something you can always check in with us. But these are very much on our radar, and we are working on them as we speak. The next one is our health inspections by our local Department of Environmental Health. If you move to a new school site, and I'm not sure if we got everyone on the call that has, but I'm congratulations. We got a lot of schools that were able to expand or find new homes or find long-term facilities. And from people that have bounced around in Prop 39 buildings, like, boy, does it feel good to get somewhere stable. With all of that, that's basically a new kitchen, right? And so we still need to have a health permit to receive reimbursement for those meals. And so if you're at a new facility and you haven't received that piece of paper yet, that's something that should get to the top of your to-do list. We can help you draft emails to the health department or help draft responses if they have questions, but we can't actually open up that part of your claiming portal until we're able to send not the inspection, but the actual received permit to the CDE. And so that is something that's going to be really important for us to get our hands on if you're in a new site or a new facility, or if you've moved your kitchen to like a different actual location on one of your campuses. For the most part, if you're a school that has existing a permit, they usually auto renew. And I think for the most part, our health departments have gotten caught back up after COVID and are back on the twice yearly inspections. Or if you're in a place like, I think some parts of San Diego and Los Angeles that are understaffed, they proactively send letters out that say we're only able to complete one inspection annually. That's all the documentation you need. We keep that posted in the kitchen. But for the most part, we want to make sure that you've got your most recent health inspection or health permit and two most recent health inspections posted in your kitchen. The other thing, which I walk in a lot of kitchens, the thing I notice is people tend to forget to take old inspections down. And so that's something that if you see an old health permit in there from 2019, you don't even need to file that. That is old. And so again, it's keeping the most relevant information up. And so looking in your kitchen and pulling old stuff down that's not relevant anymore is a good practice. All right, next one, professional standards tracking. Again, this is something that Any training you're going to, we usually send you out some sort of uh, professional standards card. The CDE will give those in trainings, but if you go to other food service trainings, those count towards annual hours that anyone that's paid with child nutrition funds need to collect. For the most part, the our part-time employees and our full-time employees only need between um, 4 to 6 hours. They hit those basically at the beginning of the school year, just doing the school food solutions trainings and maybe one webinar. You, as the food service director, should get 12 a year, and so that would be in combination with school food solutions trainings, state trainings, and any other sort of webinars you may go to, whether that's with CACFP or some other nonprofit that may, there's lots of resources out there. The most important years are your audit years. So if this is an audit year and you're doing trainings, keep a record of those. We also have a shared Google sheet we'll share with you as well. But for the most part, is the idea is in this program, the people getting paid from these dollars should be doing continuous education. Um, Finally, there are the program monitorings, mandatory signage, and your child nutrition policies. Policies are things that we've already drafted for you. And so, for the most part, we revisit them on your audit year. But if you haven't had major instructional changes or structural changes as far as how your line moves, your policies are probably still accurate. It's good to review, but those aren't something we need to start from scratch from annually. Your signage, nothing's changed on signage requirements. I've got the little images of what should be posted, and we talked in more detail on our food handlers training. But I think as far as managers is, when you go in your kitchen, the expectation should be is that you see a cluster of required postings in accessible, readable, nicely presented, right? It should look good too. And then finally, the required program monitoring. This is part that School Food Solutions will support with you as well. We can do a lot of these remotely. And so as we check in throughout the school year, we can help you do those. But the idea would be is that we look at 100% of our lunches and 50% of our breakfast operations before February 2nd or February 1st. The idea is it doesn't help to observe our school food service on the last week of school, right? We want to do it when we have time to correct and still grow the program. But those are all things as a manager, even if you're not the one doing these things, that's something that should be on your radar. That they are, and School Food Solutions will also help. These are also things we're going to remind you to get done. But these are our big annual pieces that you're going to be looking at. Quickly, food service audits, you get two. Some of you have two this year. Some of you had one last year and will have one this year. Some of you have none, and they run on a different cycle. But here are the two things you should be aware of. There is I like to call it the traditional administrative review. This is the one where they come watch your service. This is the one that's on a 5-year cycle. This is the one that takes the full year to prepare for. It's the more intensive and invasive one. The second one is the procurement review. These are relatively new, so there is still a chance that your school has not actually had one of these yet. They're on an 8-year cycle, and they're completely remote. The CDE likes to pair them together, but again, with a 5-year cycle and an 8-year cycle, there's only so much overlap there. So it's unclear. You may not have these, they may not have any sort of correlation of when you have these. The procurement review is looking at the contracts the purchases you've made using your child nutrition funds. Again, if you did all the things we talked about in the section before, then you're in good shape. If we did your RFP, we've designed that process to specifically have the documents and all of the language in the order we've sort of drafted and done everything exactly how the procurement auditors will review these. The good news with these is good news, bad news. They keep changing the rules, so it's kind of a moving target of what they're looking at. But the good news is because of that, these have been largely only technical assistance, and really the only request made of the auditor is you fix these before the next review in 8 years. And so you have a very wide window to make these corrections. And so consequences on these audits have been to date pretty minimal and usually will get corrected in our normal procurement cycle. If you are on the audit, this is a dense slide. The takeaway here is when you are selected for an audit, it is not a surprise. It is very structured by the CDE, and you can by that unlegible color coded chart, a flow chart of actions. Um, you will both have say of when they come out, and you will have advance notice. And School Food Solutions will be there as a partner to make sure it goes smoothly. So, you know, audits, although the threat of a USDA doing a spot check audit is always there. We've had it happen where we've been at schools and the USDA just pops in. Your scheduled administrative review is not that, and for the most part, you will have a lot of heads up and preparation time when you are in that in when it is your time to be reviewed. Moving quickly through this slide, because this is, again, usually the person that is going to be in the kitchen doing these monthly compliance tasks. You may have some overlap here, but I think it's important for you to know sort of the different things that we're asking of folks. So food orders with a vended meal model are submitted on a monthly basis, right? They need to forecast order, they need to plan inventory, things like that. That all being said, even though you may be putting in a whole month of food orders 2 months before that month begins, if you need to make adjustments, most vendors allow you a 3 to 5 day window to make, so you can be making adjustments on a weekly basis. Again, we pay for what we order, not, or we pay for what we order, we get reimbursed for what we serve. So if our ordering was exceeded what we're actually serving, we can adjust that in kind of real time, right? So they're not going to be able to update tomorrow's order if you call them in the afternoon, but they may be able to update next Monday's going forward. And honestly, like, say you won't get billed for that. You won't have to dispose the milk. And so we want to, even though we're placing monthly orders, we're adjusting them weekly. USDA foods, for the most part, our vendors are going to be taking care of that. But if we do choose to utilize our commodities, that's another thing that we need to be drawing down on a monthly basis. Because again, if you get, a year's worth of free apples, you need to use those month by month. You can't serve those all in May. Kitchen safety. Again, there are specifics on how to take temperatures, when to take temperatures. And you should see your staff doing that, right? So both checking equipment temperatures and food temperatures, with probe thermometers, cleaning those thermometers, having cleaning supplies in the kitchen. Again, this is not necessarily a food handling class, but like you should observe those pieces. If you see a messy kitchen, then that's something we may want to have a circle around and have a follow-up conversation with. Same thing is on a monthly basis, if we don't get, many of our vendors are able to supply a lot of our products. If we still need other things like, dry goods, extra napkins, extra condiments, again, we want to, assess those on a periodic basis and make sure that we have plenty of stock in them. And then finally, monthly claims for reimbursements. This is a really, one of the biggest risks for our schools is if we're not using our point of sale, then, and especially not using it in a timely fashion, then we may either not get reimbursed for all of our meals. If we don't get the claim in at all, we'll lose all of that money. And even if your team is if it just takes a long time for them to enter those numbers, two things happen is they're working during lunch and they got to like take time later to then put the meals back in. It's double work that can't feel good for our servers. And again, it's really inefficient on our end, and it delays when we put the claim in, and it delays when you get the money back. And so if your team is having challenges utilizing the point of sale on the line, let's have a conversation about that. Because I think that's something that we've seen a lot of schools, even with the most limited facilities, still be able to roll out and accurately do point of sale in the line at the point of distribution, and just have it all be done accurately in one clean operation. And so if we're not there yet, that's okay. But I really want to get you there because I think that's going to make your cash flow situation better, and also just the daily workload of your servers better. And so that's a conversation we can have on one of our check-in calls. Because in addition to the point of sale, these are the other things we're asking of the basic operations on a daily basis. So the number one, they got to serve the food, right? So if someone is physically like putting out breakfast and lunch, we're doing all of our temperature checks, we're running our meal, our point of sale, and we're doing our meal production records. And that's another piece that is a huge component of the audit. That's your documentation for every day the auditor that isn't out there. That's your documentation that you served compliant and reimbursable meals. If our team is not doing them accurately, if they don't have time to do them correctly, and or if they just like don't know what to do, that both is going to trickle down into other areas of the program, but that's going to leave us just out of compliance. And so as a manager of those of the team and of that process, this is something we should be checking early and often, right? Because I've never encountered someone that said, I just don't want to do these. I don't care about being in compliance. It's more like, well, our vendor doesn't send it to us in a timely fashion, or they're incorrect and I don't know how to correct it, or are the numbers that we're receiving are not the numbers that are on there. And those are all symptoms of larger issues that both we can work with the vendor on to address, but also might be meaning you're getting overcharged or underdelivered or out of compliance. And so this is a really good barometer of how your program's doing, is both like, can your staff complete these, and also were they starting accurately in the first place, which they should be. And if they're not, we've got bigger vendor issues that we want to address because we want to set our teams up for success. Looking at the meal production records is the way to do that. This is also something that's very easy to scan over to School Food Solutions for us to do a quick review, give you quick feedback, or have a larger discussion on our calls. So what I always say is scan a few days over. Let's take a look. Let's see how things are going. All right, I got a bunch of slides on meal accommodations. I'm going to move forward relatively quickly on these, so I'm going to tell you the highlights. But the big takeaway here is if you get a family that is asking for a meal accommodation, whether and you or your vendor are not certain on how to move forward with it. Some of them are very easy, right? It's we can't the student can't have milk. We substitute with a fortified soy milk. That's an easy accommodation. Some of them are not that easy. It could be a food texture. It could be, it could be a line modification, those sort of things. Let's talk about it, but don't get stuck, but also don't say we can't do this. Let's find a way to accommodate that kiddo. So here's the big broad line pieces here. As part of the USDA program, the SFAs are required to provide these accommodations. So that could be everything from a physical disability, something that is listed in an IEP or an accommodation listed in an IEP or a 504 plan, and a food allergy is generally considered to be a disability. So we would accommodate most, food allergies. Um, there is a form to do it. If this will get emailed out in my resource packet that's coming out this week. This is a great form to send with the family to the doctor because it's got all of the required fields from the USDA. Although if they already received a note from the doctor, let's review that form. If it's got the required information on it, we might be able to move forward with that. We don't want to send families back and forth with the doctor. We don't want to delay if we've got the information we need to make the accommodation. Let's take a look at that together. Um, the the other big takeaway here is these are, if the student has a chronic condition, it's not going to change, right? So if they have celiac disease as a first grader, they're going to have it as a second grader. We're still going to make that same accommodation. Although sometimes with food allergies, they may kind of grow out of them or they may get more severe. And so those would be ones that we would want to check in with the families on. So we don't need to collect these forms annually, but we do want to verify that they are still accurate with the families, right? And so, because many times we hear like, oh no, my student seems to be able to have milk now, and so we'd like to open up the rest of the menu for them. They'd like to have the mac and cheese and the cheese pizza on those days, and we can get an email from the family to document that, and then we don't have to, we can no longer we don't have to make that accommodation for the kiddos. If you have any questions there, again, let's discuss that on a case by case basis. And finally, we're talking about the documented disabilities in meal modifications. But for the most part, I actually think we got more families with preferences. Some of them are religious, some of them are ethical based, some of them are dietary based. And although we're not required to accommodate those, we probably should try. And so the good news is that most vendors I know a lot of us on this call have had conversations with our vendors, and I think, they heard you. And so for the most part, that vendors are offering on a daily basis, in many cases, a vegetarian and also a vegan meal. and they're offering more choices throughout the week. So it may have started that the only vegan meal was the sun butter and jelly sandwich. And although that accommodates the request of that family and the students, that does get old if it's 5 days a week. And what we've also seen now is just a lot of other options out there, whether it's a Beyond Meats style product or a roasted chickpea salad, or even just your basic sort of mac and cheese with and with a plant-based cheese as some of the options. There's a there's really more options out there. So in many cases, you can still say yes to the families that have a preference request because your vendor has an option that meets that. And if you're not sure, again, let's discuss. But just know that I'm seeing more and more vendors be able to accommodate more and more requests. I think that's really great because again, what we want to make sure is that everyone knows this program is for everyone, and that we've already thought about that and it's just integrated into our meal program. Pausing there. Any questions before I go on to the last section? Wonderful. Let's talk about facility challenges and limitations. Um, if you are still utilizing the Prop 39 process for campuses or for facilities, one of the things that's really important to do, and so this is again a process that starts in November. You may be getting allocations in the spring. Um, you want to make sure the language is clear around what sort of kitchen access you will or will not have, right? So you should have some, right? The Prop 39 law is about equally sharing facilities, although they're not all districts are as generous. But you'd want to, at the very least, know what you're working with, because if we do need to get another area of campus permitted, if we do need to work with our vendor to acquire equipment to increase capacity, if we have more time, the better. And so if you have a shared or Prop 39 facility, make sure that kitchen access is part of it. Again, it is a state law now, so it really should be when they are coming up with terms to share that campus, that really should be part of the conversation. Again, health permits, we talked about this before, but that is something that the CDE that is a lot. We're pretty good at, trying to smooth things over and talk to the CDE and ask for flexibility. There's no flexibility on the health permit side. If you do not have a health permit in hand, they will not allow you to submit a reimbursement. And health departments don't tend to move with urgency. And so we need time in this process. So if you have any questions, or if you're thinking about a move, or if you're still in process about it, let's reach out, let's talk about, let's be strategic, because sometimes we can only move this process along so quickly. And it's a true roadblock where we can't get around it. The other challenge, if we are looking to grow our program, um, usually the first limitation is going to be our ability to sanitize things. And so that is going to be our health department requiring us to have mop sinks, 3 compartment sanitary sinks, vegetable prep sinks, hand washing sinks. They made, who knows, there's probably another sink that they might ask for us. But if we are thinking about if we are wanting to prep food on site, there is usually not a path forward, even if it's just peeling carrots or slicing oranges. There's usually not a path forward until we have approval from our health department with the proper ways to sanitize. And that usually is going to mean 3 comp sink and grease trap. Again, we can write grants for things like this. We can be strategic. We can fundraise. But if we want to start cooking our own food, that even if it's not a next year thing, this is the type of infrastructure we want to have in place now so we can move forward. Um, the other big thing is if we're limited to hot delivery, or if we want to move to an oven, their ovens use a lot of power. Even though there are small ovens that may be able to work on 120 volts, they're both not fast, and they're not going to be able to handle a lot of capacity. And so if we want to move to heating on site, we're both going to need those retherm ovens. Those are the best options. It's the big silver thing that Rev Foods usually leases to us. They don't need to be they're ventless, and so they don't need a ducting over them. But we do need to have electrical upgrades in place to plug those things in. Again, just something that takes time and something to be aware of. So if we're getting hot delivery and our vendor is either going to discontinue that, or if we want to improve our food quality, having that electrical infrastructure there is important. That'll be, that being said, is with, we may not be the day-to-day servers, but we definitely might be the day-to-day, like, hear the problem person, right? So let's talk kind of, couple of things. When we're limited without a traditional kitchen, we may just not have everything we hope for, right? And so one of the challenges, if we're limited to just like a hot shot delivery, meaning that our vendor heats the food off site, delivers it to us warm in Cambros, those items, they can get soggy over time. They can lose their flavoring. The other challenge is going to be that, like, we're limited to really just having whole fruits, and they're not always perfectly in season, and the entrees present poorly, right? And so if we can, there's what we can always help you talk through is the path to, like, how do we get a little bit better, right? We're probably not going to be, making our own bread on site, but can we move from hot delivery to upgrading that electrical and at least pulling the food, even if it's in the same packaging, out of the oven fresh? That's a big improvement in quality, just being able to just limit the amount of time it sits in a warmer. The other thing too is, like, yeah, with our fruit, can we get the proper sanitizing equipment where the health department will allow us to have a fruit wedger and cutting boards and sanitize those after service each day? That could take our whole oranges and make them wedges, and that could be a really great way to present the fruit differently. I know a lot of schools have done that, and it just drastically changed participation, especially for the littles, right? They're not going to peel a little orange, but they would eat orange wedges. Um, are we able to get extra sets of hands there, right? And these may be parent volunteers. If we've got a middle school or a high school, these could be student volunteers. That's a great way to just both get more people involved with the program, but also just make the line in the program smoother. Finally, are our menus stagnant? Like, is the person ordering just ordering what they ordered last week because it's already pre-populated and it's just easy to just let it roll, right? Or did we not really review the menu? Did our vendor make changes and we haven't wanted to try new items yet, right? So let's continue to check and talk with our vendors. They're always changing their menus around. So if we're just sending in the same old order form, we may not be seeing all the changes they've made, and that could be limiting. Our kids may just be fatigued on our offerings because they've just been the same for too long. The final piece here is, we all go to Starbucks or restaurants or fast food. Like, as a manager, you may not be in the day to day, and so you're better able to approach and see the serving area with new eyes. And so, is the presentation, like we would expect? Or, are we taking food out of the packaging? Are we stacking it up nicely? Are we using a tablecloth? Is it well lit? Or the signage clear? Does it look like a permanent structure, or does it just look like a folding table? And again, we're never going to, like, fully do a $100,000 remodel, but we might be able to put, a tablecloth down and a Bluetooth speaker out there, right? And so, so presentation's one thing. Are we able to slow the line down, right? Is part of it is we're just pushing kids through quickly so they don't get to fully select the item they want? Maybe. Again, that's something to assess. And then, is the food accessible, right? Like, is where they're sitting to hang out with their friends where the food distribution point is? Again, this is more common in high school, right? Like, they may congregate over here, but if the kitchen's across campus, they may not go to it. Can we set up a cart and move it to them, right? And so those are all things that can enhance participation. More specifically, um, you know, have we communicated to students and families about the meal program, that it's at no cost to them? Have we specifically asked them to try the meal? Please come to school on the first day and try our muffins for breakfast and our enchiladas for lunch, right? Like, make a clear ask of them, get staff buy-in, right? And I think, after all of the things we talked about today, I think one of the common themes was that the funds are different, but they're not enough to cover the whole program. And if we're successful in this program, it can prevent us from encroaching on other funds. That protects other after-school programs, other salaries. It could add paraprofessionals. There's a lot of benefits to the whole school. And so our staff should have buy-in. Even if they're not bought in, the other request is, they can't make a rule for them. If they can't say anything nice, they shouldn't say anything at all, right? And so let's just mitigate, like, just be positive about the program. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, like, don't be negative about the program, right? I think that's a pretty reasonable ask for all of our staff, knowing that they're the role models for our kiddos. Involve the whole school. This is everything from students can support in the line. The art club could take photos of the entrees to put on digital screens to advertise the meals. Students could be required to, or not required, but have the school newspaper write up, do a meal review in the paper, right? You've got clubs, you've got programs, you've got kids doing things on campus, and what a great way to integrate the food program with that. I mean, part of it, we're just looking for stuff for them to experiment, to learn, to do, to grow, right? Like, the meal program can be an asset there, not like an added on sort of silo of responsibility. The other piece too is, part of this is it does take skin in the game from us. There's no magic wand. And so that could be investing in staff time, that could be investing in equipment. Again, we're in a little catch 22, is our vendor would provide more equipment if we serve more meals, but we don't have the equipment we need to serve more meals. And so our program just sort of is stagnant. And part of that is, that's not helping anyone, and long term, we're not going to be successful. And so how can we be smart? How can we leverage grants, and how can we invest in ourselves, right? Because the free meals for all isn't going anywhere. The meal mandate's not going anywhere. We will be serving meals into the future. And so let's serve food the kids like, right? um Other things just to think about: are we announcing the day's lunch? Here's a little example of a poster you can download from the USDA's website, and I can send you a copy if you like it. Doesn't have to be this poster, but, like, did we tell them what's for lunch today? Did we announce it? Could we do it on Parent Square? Is there a school announcement in the morning? Like, is there a whiteboard? It can be low tech too, right? Just a dry erase A-frame sign, right? That says hot dogs today. um are we Is it clear that what we're having, what we're there? Yeah. And then the presentation, how do we send it out? um and also, do we have enough time? And you know is there a way to is there a way to allow kids to just spend, like, again, that also depends on, sometimes we just don't have more time, right? But a lot of schools I visit, I see that kids get rushed through the line, and then they just go sit, right? Or that they're not dismissed yet from the cafeteria. And we're not talking 20 more minutes, we're talking 3 more minutes, right? So maybe have someone at the front of the line kind of meter as students go through. And so it just feels less congested, right? Since you're a manager, since you may not be the one that's out there on a daily basis, say, looking like, is this a line that, as what I'd feel comfortable? Like, are people pushing and shoving? Does it feel congested? Like, would I want to go through this line and get food, or would I just go and, like, hang out with my friends, right? And so I think having your fresh eyes come to observe your programs is invaluable, and that's data you can bring back to us so we can have a great conversation on our next check-in. The last sort of plug here. So two quick plugs, and then we're going to wrap up. So, for the most part, where we can grow our programs is during breakfast. And so breakfast is required. Before the bell, breakfast is not. So if you wanted to wait, if you've got students that have transportation issues, if it's just chaotic in the morning, if you've got an A period where, like, it's not, they're busy, they're already in a class, you could still do, your lunch at the first recess, or sorry, lunch. You could still do a breakfast service, a single breakfast service at your first recess, at a brunch break at 9:05 in the morning, at your first passing period. Everyone's on campus, and even your kiddos that may have had some food when they left the house may be hungry again by then. As long as it's not too close to your lunch period, doing a breakfast service on campus is after the school day starts is super efficient. Also, someone doesn't have to get there super duper early. It's a lot easier to integrate hot items because, again, you've got time for the oven to warm up. And so expanding your breakfast program actually could look like simplifying your breakfast program, just having higher participation because you're doing it after the bell. Finally, so last piece here, I won't say a ton about it, but if you're interested, I'll talk to you more about it. There are options for a reimbursable supper program. I have gotten wind that many vendors see this as a growth opportunity, so they're going to send their salespeople to talk to you about this program. You should talk to them. If they've got a convincing solution for you, I want to hear it. Um, but there's a couple of things you should know. So the when we were talking about dinner or supper, it's USDA at-risk supper. That is something that you both need. There are certain eligibility requirements to be part of that program. It's also a separate application. It's run through the Department of Social Services, and it would require separate procurement and a separate audit. Now, those are all things we can do for you, and those are all things that, signing up for this program, it's a matter of months, not a matter of years. It's not an insurmountable project, but it will be work on, it'll be, a small cost with School Food Solutions and a small amount of work on your plate. Again, not insurmountable if you qualify and you want to do it. And with that, you'll be able to serve another reimbursable meal. It'll look pretty much like lunch, but a slightly different menu, a few less restrictions, and so you might not see, as many of the vegetables you don't like. But it does come with all of the other, this is, if you've heard me say free like a puppy, it's a reimbursable meal, but it still comes with all of those other restrictions through a separate audit. So something that I think is a really good thing to do. I think when we have, especially if we have after school sports programs, kids on campus for long days, like it's much more substantial than the snack that we may be offering right now. But just know that not everyone qualifies. It's not an easy add-on. It's a separate application process, and it will come with all of the other compliance pieces, including needing someone to, heat the meals potentially and run the point of sale. So just a little food for thought is that if you want to do it, let's talk more about it. But it is still it would be a big addition to your program, a worthy addition, but it's not as easy as just passing out suppers. And so I want to kind of get ahead of that because I don't want to be the bearer of bad news if they approach, one of your principals and sell them on this idea. Again, it's a good idea. It just we've got to allocate the proper amount of resources to make sure it goes smoothly. Um, then finally, sorry, I'm skipping because we've talked about a lot of stuff. Food waste. We've we spent a lot of time in our food handlers training. So if you were there or if your team members were there, of how to really make offer versus serve work for your schools. There's no benefit to having extra food that you don't plan to serve. Like there's just no value in having 100 extra milks, right? There's no value in having an extra box of apples. They're going to spoil before you find something to do with them. And so the biggest thing we want to do is we want to right size our ordering so that we're getting the right amount of food. And that's everything from ordering the right amount of, ordering a realistic amount of entrees that match what we intend to serve. And it also means working with our vendor to adjust the percentages of fruit, vegetable, and milk. And so that we give everyone a choice, but we don't have piles and piles of leftovers. That's both financially prudent because we pay for everything we don't serve, but also with Senate Bill 1383, this is the one that requires all schools to either recover or divert their organic waste. For the most part, we can stay largely in compliance with this bill with just doing our best to not create that waste. If we do have food that is still consumable, but we don't intend to serve, we should donate it. That could look like a fruit basket in the front office. That could be donating it to the local food bank or pantry or shelter, whoever might be closest in our community that's able to handle that food. They may even come pick it up for us. The other part is if it is organic waste but cannot be consumed, that would be half of the apple or the compostable bin that the food came in, then we should be putting those in our organic waste bins, our green bins. I'm very clear not to say compost piles because, again, at no point does this law mean that you need to get a pitchfork and turn over compost on your campus. It will smell. You will get rats. Don't do that. But we will need to work with our waste providers. In my area, they just have been swapping out the green bins this week. So this is a state law. Everyone needs to comply with this. So I think you'll be hearing more about this over the coming few months and years. If you don't have organic waste pickup in your area, that's not uncommon. I think in the high desert area, you're not allowed to do it because it's a fire hazard. That's okay. Again, let's just focus on the recovery side. So let's right size our orders so we create as little waste as we can. Let's utilize share bins, right? So we can have our share tables. So there's, places for food, kids that want extra food to take it. And then if we've got a good home that we can send that food that's still consumable to, what like a food bank, then that's a great place to then on Fridays they can come pick up our extra apples and unexpired milk and then take them somewhere to be used. That that is a lot for anyone. And I realize that when I'm talking to you as food service directors, you are also operations managers. You are you wear multiple hats. So number one, thank you for your time today. I'll be sending out resources for you. Again, we talked about a lot. Hopefully this was helpful. From as we for next pieces, if you're an audit school, we're going to talk tomorrow on our initial audit call. For everyone else, we either have our periodic calls or you're welcome to reach out and connect with the school foods team. And hopefully you've got other ideas from this call today, how to best support your staff. There will be a video coming out of this training, as well as there'll be additional trainings. We'll have two more of these offered. So if at some point you're like, I want someone else to attend, you can also sign them up for that as well. We got done a little before the 2 hour mark. I'm going to stay on the call, and you're welcome to come off mute if you've got questions or want to chat. If you don't, you're welcome to go get lunch and get on with your day. And so again, thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your week as you're preparing for the start of school.